Hi, I'm Kristina Beek. I'm an associate editor with Dark Reading, and I'm here with another episode of our Heard It from a CISO series. I'm joined by Marshall Erwin, who is a CISO at Fastly. Marshall, let's just start from the beginning. What does your education and professional background look like, and how did you first get involved in cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me and Fastly here today. Really looking forward to the conversation. So my background and sort of the way that I eventually landed in my current role is pretty circuitous. It's an interesting background in that I originally have a computer science background by training out of college. And I went to a very clear memory of going to the career fair, and this was 2004. And right there was like the Google booth was right here, and the booth for the Central Intelligence Agency was right here. And there's no one at the CIA booth. And I thought, like, well, that seems like an interesting place to, I should at least go talk to them before I go over to those folks. Yeah. And I ended up having that conversation and landed my first job out of college in the Central Intelligence Agency's sort of cyber unit, doing some super interesting work. And that's what originally got me into security, cybersecurity at that point. But then I shifted gears and spent a fair amount of time in the CIA's counterterrorism center as well, which really sort of gave me the sort of culture and ethos that I just had to try to bring to my work today. So that's sort of, the early stages of my career. And then I can tell you the longer arc if you're interested about how I got back to the cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. Like, how would you describe your journey to becoming a CISO?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, like I said, I started my career in cybersecurity. It was a super interesting time. This was 2004, 2005, when I think we had a real feeling, the people sort of working these issues, that there was some real existential growing risk when it came to cyber. But at that point, cyber didn't even mean anything. It wasn't like it wasn't the term of art it is today. And I think at that time, there really wasn't broader appreciation across the industry or across the government at that point about what that risk was. And the government was focused elsewhere. And so it was a real challenge at the time to get attention to our work for that reason. That's partly why at that point I shifted over to work on counterterrorism. And like I said, that was an incredible opportunity for me, where I really learned what it meant to like show up and lead and work with a team to tackle what felt like immediate security concerns or risks and protect people. And like I said, that's kind of the ethos that I still tend to bring to my like cybersecurity roles today, even though the job at that point and the nature of that risk was quite different. So as a result, I got away from sort of technical security work for almost, I would say, like a little more than 5 years. I then moved to the U.S. Congress, and I was working on technical sort of cybersecurity issues around the time of the Snowden disclosures. And so I had an interesting background at that point, because there weren't a lot of people, sort of staff within Congress, that had experience in the intel community, technical knowledge as well, and security knowledge. And so that really is what kind of brought me back into the more like sort of security, like technical security work that I've been doing since that time. So I did that in Congress for a little bit, and then eventually landed a role at Mozilla, the maker of the Firefox browser, which was an incredible opportunity. It's a really incredible organization that allows people to do interesting things, and empowered me to do everything from implement with our product leaders like really important privacy and security properties, but also step in and fill a void when it came to the internal security of the organization. And I did that for almost a little less than a decade at Mozilla before moving over to Fastly about 2 years ago. So.
Awesome. That's so great. Yeah. So from my understanding, Fastly represents helps some big names like Reddit, Pinterest, the New York Times, from my understanding. So what is it like working at Fastly and being involved with those kind of companies?
Yeah, like I think the thing that I really love about working at Fastly is our ability to have real impact. We're not a huge company. We're a relatively like small company, but we nonetheless service a large part of the world's internet traffic, including some of the largest companies on the planet. And practically what that means for us and our work and the team that I lead is that when we do a good job building our network securely, running our network securely, we are protecting a large part of the world's web traffic. Alternatively, if we make mistakes, we can put that traffic in jeopardy. And so the consequences of our work and the impact is huge, and the stakes are real. It can put us in stressful situations, but nonetheless, that's also why we like the job, is because we can have real impact on a large global scale. And that's always something that I've looked for in the roles that I've taken.
Yeah, awesome. So part of the reason why we started this series is to kind of just help guide people and answer questions when they're interested in going into cybersecurity, whether that be they're, recent graduates, maybe they're long into their current careers, but they're looking to pivot. So how would you say is the best way for someone to enter this field with all your years of experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say I can tell you what we are looking for now when we think about members for our team, which is, I think it's important for people to be able to do two things. One is to have a technical facility and a technical background, and ideally have had some hands-on keyboard experience in development or systems administration before you sort of move into a security role. And that, I think, we found, again, at a company of our size, where you can be focused on your security work, but you need to have a good technical intuition of how our systems work and to be able to engage with a really engineering forward company like Fastly. And so to have time, sort of butt in seat time doing technical work, I think is really important, even before you've taken over and are more focused on actual security. And so that's part of how we think about our hiring today. And generally, we found that people with a strong sort of technical background and experience with hands-on keyboard, that is what allows them to sort of flex in different situations depending on what the precise need is, or whatever incident we're dealing with at the time.
Yeah. So going back to what you said about, being at the career fair back in 2004. Mm-hmm. So when you say that, I feel like today there is the option of studying cybersecurity, computer science, whatever it may be, in college, in undergrad, or today I feel like it's really popular to pursue different certificates. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend to people? A mix of both, one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think the certificate, that was really not a path typically when I was going into the field. Right. To my mind, it's those sort of cybersecurity certificates can be useful to open doors, mm-hmm. but they aren't, to my mind, critical. Okay. If I see someone with a strong technical background generally, mm-hmm. I will weight that as much as any particular certificate that they have. Mm-hmm. So that, yeah, I mean, it is a factor. It is a different career path than it was available to me. Like I said, my path is circuitous, but I think that reflects the overall lack of security maturity across the industry, why I could take that circuitous path, whereas you can't really, it'd be more rare to do that now. But I don't weight the sort of certificates too strongly relative to other technical skills, computer science background, that type of work.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting to me about cybersecurity is when I think about, especially prior to ever working at Dark Reading, cybersecurity was not at the forefront of my mind when I thought of technology. And so when I think of people today, how should they discern whether, if it's cybersecurity that is what they're really interested in, or some different facet of tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because, I think one of the challenges in our industry is cybersecurity is everything security at this point, right? And the breadth of what we mean by that has just continued to grow mm-hmm. over time. I'm not sure if I'm probably not answering your question. I don't have a good answer for it, but it's certainly a challenge, I think, is that breadth and knowing sort of what we mean when we talk about security.
Yeah. And this reminds me of, I just interviewed Jason Maynard, who's CISO at CISO, and he mm-hmm. talked a lot about, I think something he talked about was how his son was looking at cybersecurity roles, online and saw how
Mhm.
much they were paying, and it was like a ton of money. And he's like, "This is so cool! Like, you
Mhm.
can work from home and you get paid all this money, da da da." But then
Mhm.
it's like there's a huge amount of responsibility that's put on your shoulders. What would you say to that in terms of people who are interested in coming into cybersecurity, in terms of the level of responsibility that comes with these kinds of roles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be challenging, particularly in the middle of like a major incident.
Yeah.
Um, the the like major incidents that I have gone through in my career have been really important to like my arc overall, but
Hmm.
they are stressful situations. You got to show up, you got to do the long hours at times, and that is what is expected. And there's a certain amount of cost to that, personally, level of stress there. It's something to be mindful of if it's the path that you want to go into. But also, like I said, in retrospect, those are some of the things that I look back on and think they were the most important pivotal moments of my security career as well.
Yeah. Um, in terms of cybersecurity as a field, would you say it's a field that's growing? I know with like the rise of AI, there's a lot of concerns for, some entry level professionals in terms of is AI sort of taking over the responsibilities of our jobs where these entry level roles are like no longer necessary at all. What would you say to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, like I'll give you my like current sense, but I'm going to say I'm not super confident in where it's going to go yet. But
Okay.
I think the concern about like AI tooling possibly replacing entry level roles is should be a little bit less of a concern when it comes to security roles than other basic developer roles. That's kind of my expectation today. And the basic reason for that is like just about any team, even putting aside your sort of new AI trends,
Mm-hmm.
any security team is really struggling with volume and with the amount that every day, the incidents you need to respond to, the vulnerabilities on your systems, the risk that you're identifying. And we have known, I think, and realized as an industry for some time that we can't hire our way out of that problem. That's just not going to scale. And so and I think many of my peers have been looking for opportunities to bring in better automations that allow us to sort of filter through that noise so that then when we have people that we can throw at a problem, we're focusing them on the high risks when we need them. And as a result, I think AI is really going to be helpful in that respect. It's We haven't been able to hire our way out of the problem. We know when we have a really bad incident, we're going to need like strong technical people that can do the incident response, run down a problem, and fix it. But prior to that, we need better ways to filter through that noise and manage through the volume of what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And that's a problem we've had for a long time, and these tools are going to help us with that.
Yeah. In terms of what you said about, needing people who can do these things that are expected of them in terms of solving these sort of problems, what stands out to you in terms of people that you've either currently manage or have managed in the past, whether it be technical skills or soft skills or the way they handle problems? Like what are some standout qualities to you?
Yeah, well, maybe I mentioned some of the incidents that I have been uh, involved in the past, and just to like say a little bit more about that, and then talk about the skills
Yeah.
question. Um, uh, the Looking back, like the major incidents that I have been involved in have typically been extremely stressful, very time intensive, very challenging situations. But those were also major pivot points in my career. That's where I probably learned the most, where
Yeah.
you learn that like, security risks become actual problems, lack of security controls become actual problems. It really shows you the reality of why we advocate for what we do.
Yeah.
And it also shows you how you respond. And I think it also gives people an opportunity to really lead. And the reason those major incidents have been a sort of pivot point in my career is because I think those are the times where maybe we had a vacuum in security leadership. And I was able to step into that vacuum, and my company leaders were able to see me do that. And they empowered me to lead and then gave me opportunities to continue to do that. And as a result, I've landed in the role that I'm in today. And so that's something that I look for as well. in those major, who's showing up, often in a major stressful, scary situation where you've had some sort of compromise or breach or some major vulnerability, it can be chaotic. And some people in that chaos and stressful situation can step back, and other people step in. And even if they don't know exactly what to do, they step in and try to be helpful or try to lead. And that's a real differentiator that I find is a signal of the people that we can really depend on and that we want to grow in their roles.
You talk about the opportunity in these really pivotal moments to sort of step into almost like a leadership role, which has landed you to where you are today. And I know you say that your career has taken a lot of turns to get to where you are today. Would you say that being a CISO is something that you aspire to? Because the position of being a CISO is very interesting to me. I don't know if a lot of people would say it's something they aspire to be in, just because there's so much responsibility. But what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, to me, the responsibility is what makes the role. Like, because like I said, part of, again, what motivated me to join Fastly is the stakes. Again, like, we protect a large part of the web's internet traffic. If I do my job well, I have real impact. And yeah, some people might not be looking for that. Like, those stakes can be intimidating at times, especially when you're in the middle of a fire that you've got to somehow put out. But I think those also make the job interesting and fun. And especially in retrospect, again, like when I've gone through major incidents or compromises, they're typically not fun at the time, but you look back and actually you can be proud of the work that you've done. So
for sure. So one of my last questions is, what does the future of cybersecurity, this field, what does it look like to you?
Oh man, I'll say, one thing I struggle with, I'll see if I can put a positive spin on this eventually, but I'll start with the negative spin, which is, like I said, I started in this field back in 2004, give or take. And that was at a point in time when, like I said, there really wasn't, while the people working on the topic felt like there was really some growing existential problems that we were going to face, there wasn't broad awareness. Over time, I think that broad awareness, we clearly have that today. But the risk has materialized and we aren't getting ahead of it enough. And it feels like the security risk has really diffused across the system, and companies and governments have thus far not figured out the right set of solutions to decrease that risk in a meaningful way. And as a result, consumers are put in risk at a daily basis on a level that I think is still unacceptable. And that means there's a lot more work to do. We got good work to do. If you're someone who wants to be a CISO and lead and take that responsibility, you can have a big impact. But despite all of the effort and thinking that has gone into this field, we need to make a lot more progress, and we have a lot more opportunities ahead of us for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have I know we talked about a lot, but any last words of advice to people interested in going into this field? What would you say?
Yeah, maybe I'll just double down on two of the points that I made here. One is just that hands-on keyboard practical experience, I think, is important, and it allows you to be effective in a security role when you have that background. And the other would be look at major security incidents as opportunities to lead, and they can really define the path of your career if that's what you want them to be for you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with Dark Reading today. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. Thank you as well.